Brilliant. Well, welcome everyone to our second March Cabinet meeting. No, March Cabinet meeting, because we're on the 28th of February last time we gathered. So our March Cabinet meeting. Clearly, this is still a hybrid meeting, but only obviously the members that are in the room count towards chorusy and presence. I will hand over to Andy just to read out the protocol, and then we'll come back to the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder, only speak when invited to by the Chair. All participating members to keep their camera on during the proceedings unless they have connection issues. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the Chair. Please ensure officers remotely attending that your mics are muted when you're not speaking. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, please refer to the page number. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the committee or to make other comments. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting.
Thanks very much, Andy. In terms of opening announcements, I just wanted to thank everyone that had been involved in the Ukraine fundraising effort. We obviously mentioned that at full council, but it was something we were doing for the first time when we were here 2 weeks ago. As I think I said at full council, cabinet, senior officers, and Claire as a member of public raised over £1,100 just from the ribbon work, and has, via the speaker, inspired numerous primary schools up and down the borough to make their own ribbons. I had the privilege, as did Deputy Mayor Bramble, the Speaker, of visiting St Dominic's, but I know there have been bake sales and a real sense of community response from across the borough. Paid huge tribute to the de Beauvoir Association, and de Beauvoir welcomes refugees. They held a concert 2 Saturdays ago, and they've now, because they savvily donated via match funding, raised over £11,000 just from that one concert. And I know E5 Baby Bank filled another van in the last couple of days. I know the Speaker is organising an event tomorrow to support Ukrainian Hackney residents, but also to bring together some of those that have been doing this fundraising effort. So just a huge thank you to the Speaker and his office for that continued work, and the Ukraine reception that will be taking place tomorrow night. I'm sure all of us would pass on our sort of solidarity, continued solidarity to Ukrainian people, and especially those in civilian elected office that have been abducted in the last couple of days. I obviously reference what it must be like to be in similar settings, in similar buildings, doing similar things in all parts of Ukraine now. And what we continue to do is offer our solidarity. I don't have anything more to add to that, but just thank everyone for what they are doing. Councillor Williams and I are obviously working on what our refugee response looks like, and more about that probably later in the week. And have effectively exchanged letters with the government, and I know the Chief Executive and others on the officer side also have had similar correspondence. In terms of apologies for absence, I don't think I have any apologies for absence other than joining remotely are Councillor Chapman, Coban and Mackenzie. I'm not in the feed, and I can't because my battery will go flat. But I think everyone else is here, so I suppose apologies for Councillor Ema, who doesn't appear to be in the sidebar that I can see. And then everyone else is here from what I can tell. There are no urgent items of business. Usual declarations of interest. Does anyone have any? No. Beyond those that we already have. Notice of intention to conduct business in private, none received. There obviously, I think, are exempt. No, there's no exempt business from what I can see. We haven't had any questions, deputations or petitions. So there was obviously that wonderful flourishing of questions and democracy at our last cabinet meeting. I look forward to seeing the public again. but we don't have anything this evening. Item 6 is the capital update. I think I preempted the capital update when we met on the 28th of February, and clearly some publicity did go out, and we're really proud of the investment that's going into our special needs provision, and there's obviously reference to that, the 98 places in the report, the continued investment in our ICT equipment, a very interesting transfer of 9 square metres of land at one of our new council developments, and the usual run through section 106, but it is worth highlighting, given how much work we do around culture, what that means to the borough, that it captures that section 106 contribution to our cultural activities, including the carnival, which we're obviously all pleased to welcome its return last week. And I think also we have been preparing for some of the Discovering Young Hackney work, and that obviously chimes with the Youth Awards that Deputy Mayor Bramble and I attended, and the Mayor's Music Awards last week as well. Did anyone else want to sort of come in on the capital update? Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Glanville. And it was just to pick up, if I may, just on the spend of Community Infrastructure Levy through the Section 106 and Community Infrastructure Levy Board. This investment into cultural activities, of which you made a great reference to, Hackney Carnival being one of those activities that are to be invested into. But it was just to kind of contextualise it, if I may, Mayor Glanville, just to ensure that we all understand that this investment has come about through new development in the borough. And what it's actually focused on is trying to make sure that we're a community that's together as one, and that we are feeling confident. So as the borough changes, as new development comes forward and communities and neighbourhoods change around us, we ensure that using the cultural activities that we can keep people together, create that inclusive community, and just ensure that going forward, we've got a great deal of understanding and we have a great sense of pride in our community, and it is through these cultural activities and this investment that we can ensure that Hackney remains a place for everyone. Thank you very much, Mayor Glanville.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Chair. Only to offer my thanks to Deputy Mayor Nicholson and the officers that have been working on this piece of work. And we celebrate our culture and diversity in Hackney and welcome the investment that we have made to ensure that we bring communities together and invest in activities and events that really brings our community together and helps us celebrate everything that we're so proud of here in Hackney.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. And as I sort of mumbled through my introduction, the land exchange is actually quite interesting because it's a wonderful set of new affordable housing delivery in Kings Park that some of us are going to see on Wednesday. This isn't the key aspect of that housing delivery, but it tidies up one part of the site, which I think is really welcome. And thank housing colleagues that are here for other items for their work on this particular development, because it's a really exciting cross-laminate timber new affordable housing scheme. With all of that, are we happy to agree the capital update? Did you want to add anything, Councillor Woodley, on SEND? Go on.
Only to say thank you for coming out to visit Side by Side, the new premises for Side by Side. It was quite interesting seeing the before and after by visiting the current site and then going to see the new building and what an enormous benefit it will bring to some of our children with special educational needs. But obviously there are 3 other sites that we are dedicating funding towards developing as well as part of our additional resource programme. And yeah, just thanks very much to Cabinet for support.
Thanks, Councillor Woodley, and it was absolutely incredible to see that new school building. I think 4 stories of provision on the edge of Stamford Hill. Really high aspirations for such important provision, and while it is in the independent sector, I think it serves community very well, and also that broader Send Forum work that's been happening and the leadership that's been shown by Side by Side by others. So it does sit within that family of provision, and really excited to make that investment commitment this evening as well. So thank you for reminding me about last week's visit. Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Councillor Chapman, the OFP is with you.
Thank you, Chair. It's the last OFP report for this financial year, and we are setting out the overspend on the current year of just under 5 million, which is a reduction on the 7 million, I think, reported in August, and shows that we have been able to contain that within that limit. Obviously, it's important going forward that we continue to ensure that in 2023 we keep our expenditure within the budgets agreed, as in order to mitigate the financial pressures that we're going to face in that year, and it looks like the years ahead as well. The report also contains a recommendation to just scrolling through here, that to agree not to recharge leaseholders in building above 11 million for costs associated with fire safety works where recommended as part of the fire risk assessment. This follows discussions with leaseholders, and I think is entirely a fair and proper way to go forward. So I commend the report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. And just to build on what you said about recommendation 3.1, across the borough, with existing fire risk assessments, it's been custom and practice not to charge individual leaseholders the costs of those fire remediation works linked to cladding. Clearly, obviously, not charging individual tenants in those buildings, but there is a collective financial cost to the council and the HRA. This updates that in the context of PAS 9980, comes out of a conversation at King's Crescent, and I think, borough-wide renews our commitment to making sure that leaseholders don't bear those costs directly. And welcome the work that Ian and the team have done across the council to get to this point and give that reassurance. Clearly, this is an issue that goes way beyond council leaseholders, and we know from our own casework and communities, whether people are in housing association property or private sale, there are still deep challenges over cladding, leaseholder charges and fire safety works. And we've always said as a council, whether it's existing stock or as a developer, we would lead by example. And I think that's what we're doing through this report. Are we happy to agree it or note it and the recommendations and agree them? Thank you. Item 8 is Britannia update. There's a lot in here, and it is a way of introducing the report. Obviously, we took a decision at the start of the Britannia project to bring all major decisions to the full cabinet. There are elements of this journey that we clearly could have delegated to CIPC. I think this update, though, would still come here because it's of that significance. Clearly, it won't have it will be no surprise that we're incredibly proud of the social infrastructure that we have opened at Britannia. That goes back to summer last year, and the incredible statistics that we've seen every time we've updated Cabinet and the public about usage of the Britannia Leisure Centre, the breadth of that usage, the membership, its diversity and the projects that we're leading on out of that fantastic new space. We've also opened the City of London Academy at Shoreditch Park, which is now providing that excellent education that we promised the residents of the borough, and obviously those parents that chose Shoreditch Park when it was in the temporary site near Haggerston. That is all now done. I think we all regret the Secretary of State's decision around the Section 77 to not allow us to proceed to deliver upfront the council housing, both social rent and shared ownership, as well as that deeper investment in education social infrastructure around Shoreditch Park School and the Early Years Centre. We are, though, not sort of crying over spilt milk in those terms. We have come up with, in the recommendations here, a plan to rephase the 2B residential development and make sure, and we renew that commitment up front, on-site council housing for local residents at Britannia. And that is what we're delivering through the recommendations set out here. I just want to thank, Hayley, Rachel, Chris, Jane and others from Housing Regen and partners, but it goes far wider than that. Education, property, the whole Britannia team, finance and legal that have supported us on this journey, as well as my cabinet colleagues past and present that have been part of the Britannia board. And portfolios have shifted quite a lot in our Britannia journey, but everyone has resolutely remained committed. And I think it's one of the signature achievements of this administration. What we're setting out here is how we go on to deliver the residential. I do have to alert Cabinet to the fact that the rephasing in light of the Section 77 agreement does increase the costs of the Britannia development, and we have to mitigate some of the risks associated with the Britannia development by the sales and marketing strategy at 3.4 that we're agreeing this evening. But this allows us to continue in-house delivery, council housing on site, and as I say, all of the other updates within the report, including the local marketing of shared ownership, which is obviously incredibly important. There's another part of the report that probably doesn't completely come across, but is worth also highlighting. This keeps us on track for delivering 2B residential and the associated landscape works, which include the fully expanded school playgrounds at the City of London Academy. And if we were to go back to the drawing board with a whole new residential master plan, we would delay the handing over of that much needed infrastructure to the school. And I don't think we would achieve any better outcomes than the ones that we've got sort of planning permission for. But this brings all that together in one cabinet report, allows the team to go on with the delivery of the residential and go out to procurement for a constructor, which should see us on site next year for these much needed new homes. Any questions or comments? Councillor Kennedy.
I just wanted to add, Chair, for the avoidance of doubt, that in the first 6 months that it was open, the new leisure centre, the attendance was 160% of the attendance of the corresponding 6 months pre-pandemic. So an extraordinary success there. The Shoreditch Park City of London Academy are delighted with their new school and their new building, and this paper looks forward to us celebrating as much success, I think, on this site in the next section of construction as the first section has delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Williams.
Sorry, if I might, just as a member of the Leisure Centre, I just wanted to say, attest to what Councillor Kennedy is saying. It is incredibly well attended, so much so that it's not always possible to get a booking at a class. I set the alarm on my phone to 10 p.m. every night so I can book myself into a class. All of the classes, the entire leisure centre and the cafe are very well used by representatives from across the community, from different cultural backgrounds, different age groups, different need levels as well. And it's incredibly warming to see just how well used the leisure centre is. I think that by other residents, by our residents, by our residents. And it's a testament to what the council can do and should be doing in modern Hackney. So thank you for everyone who's put a huge amount of work into that to deliver it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I suppose what I would add, having been down to Shoreditch Park today with Councillor Woodley and Councillor Adams, is just also how changed that area of the borough is, but also, it doesn't stop here. We are going on site now with the works to Shoreditch Park and the Adventure Playground, which will see really improved provision for local young people. That was co-designed, and I didn't thank Emma Winch, but all of the work that she did on Bradford Square and the team and the conversation and the co-production that we're seeing around Shoreditch Park, the intergenerational work around all three settings. And I know Councillor Maxwell has been incredibly robust on picking up and championing that as both the local ward councillor and mayoral advisor for older people. And I think we really look forward to what those parks works will do, sitting alongside the leisure centre and delivering for Shoreditch and Hackney people more generally. Are we happy to agree the report? And I really do thank all the officers and colleagues that are on the call this evening for the work that they've gone into this. It's a true team effort. Agreed. Thank you. Sorry, I should have said there is an exempt appendix at item 20. If colleagues do want to discuss that, we can do that later, but I'm assuming in colleagues looking at the full report that they won't want to, but I will just double check that later and we can exclude the press and public if colleagues want to. Can we just re-agree that, having said that caveat? Agreed? Thank you. So item 9 is the general exception School Street SS32 at Harrington Hill Primary School and the associated LTN at Mount Pleasant Lane, moving from experimental to permanent. I have to announce that the general exception rule has been used due to a clerical error, which resulted in a 28-day statute notice period for publication of key decisions not being complied with. Forms that were filled in time carried a superficial error that resulted in a missing publication date for the notice period. The decision is required to be made within an 18-month window of the experimental traffic order being made to remain compliant with primary legislation and statutory guidance. The scheme was introduced by the council using its powers under the Road Traffic Act. Regulation Act 1984 to bring about the LTM by way of experimental traffic order. This requires the council to require a simultaneous consultation while the scheme is in place, observe and collect data on the scheme, and make a decision whether to keep, amend or remove the scheme within 18 months. The 18-month deadline is fixed in primary legislation. Any extension has to be agreed by the Secretary of State and only given if there's an ongoing public inquiry. If a decision was not taken within the 18-month limit, the experimental traffic order would expire, which in itself would be a decision, although not one made consciously or with the same robust evidence as per the statutory guidance. The schemes would then need to be removed and the roads reopened. Within that context, I hand over to Councillor Coban to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you can hear me, but my voice is going in and out. I've not been feeling too well. But as you've said, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I'm struggling. I need to just grab myself water. Sorry. Sorry, Mayor, I'm going to try one more time. Can you hear me properly now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you've outlined, obviously the low traffic neighbourhood schemes have been brought in on an experimental order, which means that we have obviously that period where we're looking at sort of a number of different monitoring factors in place, including obviously traffic and air quality. We've been looking at complex consultation, which has obviously gone live throughout that 18-month period. We're now at the point where we've obviously made most schemes, decisions on most of the schemes. This is obviously an exceptional circumstance given the sort of the reasons that you've outlined. But with that, Mayor, I'll pass it over to the officers if they want to say anything, just because my voice is, I feel I'm losing my voice.
I think you can just say as set out, Councillor Coban. I think we've read the report.
If you're happy with that. No.
Yeah. Are we happy with that? Yeah. Okay, happy to agree the report.
And just to say that I welcome this work from the officers. I remember a few years ago now. Apologies. Just to say I welcome this work by Councillor Coburn and officers and reflect back a few years ago now before the council had such an extensive strategic plan where I joined parents and young people outside London Fields Primary School where we campaigned for this piece of work done. So I really welcome the hard work now that's going in at strategic level across the council to ensure more schools benefit from this action. Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously we had that wonderful endorsement from the Mayor of London last week around our School Streets programme, and the wider governance of that obviously isn't at the meeting and builds on what Deputy Mayor Bramble said. We do have 48 school streets, most of them now permanent, largest network in London, and it was brilliant to welcome the Mayor to see that only last week. Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, item 10, voluntary and community sector property portfolio, lettings policy.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have 46 properties in our voluntary and community sector portfolio. We had a strategy that was 10 years, 11 years now old, having been created in 2011. And when we spoke to our voluntary and community sector partners as part of the consultation for our voluntary and community sector strategy, they were very clear that in terms of the properties, they wanted to be treated in much more of the same way across different organisations. They wanted shorter leases, but leases that spoke to what they were trying to achieve for their communities. So we're introducing community agreements with all our tenants. We are keeping, because that was another one of the things we were asked to do, we're keeping that basic £4 a square foot, which is a rent that absolutely enables our community organisations to flourish. You and I, Chair, visited the old fire station where we're going to invest £800,000 to preserve the structure of the building. The Hackney Caribbean Elders Organisation, where we've invested £250,000 to bring some rooms back into use there to enable them to be able to let them out to other organisations to give themselves some sustainability. We will shortly be starting work at the Mary Lloyd Centre, where Age UK are going to convene several partner organisations from the sector in the same building to build a sort of voluntary sector hub there in that building. All these things are the kind of arrangements that we would expect to see reflected through this strategy in the community agreements. And I commend it to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. It was brilliant to see those two buildings with you and Councillor Maxwell and ward councillors again only last week. I know that we could add to that list the work that we're doing around Unviet and Hackney Chinese, and across the borough we're making those long-term commitments to invest in those assets and unlocking them for social value and voluntary sector lettings. And I know that the flexibility that's being allowed to accommodate some of that generating income in the new lettings policy is also being co-produced. I think it puts us on a really strong foundation and delivers certainty to many of the organisations that we are so proud of in the borough. And I know many of us have been out and about in the borough being buttonholed, saying, when's this coming to Cabinet? When's this coming to Cabinet? And obviously it is this evening. And I was particularly proud of the visit that we made to the depot at Eastway, where Hackney Playbus is located, clustered with other voluntary sector organisations with Core Arts as the sort of head lease there, able to just do so much. So really proud of this work, and huge thanks to Sonia, Chris, Simon, David Rice-Oxley and others that have been a part of this journey and this renewed commitment to the voluntary sector in Hackney. Are we happy to agree the report? Great. Item 11, Councillor Williams, Poverty Reduction Strategy.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a significant piece of work and one that is incredibly important. And whilst I don't want to sound too bleak about it, I do think there are some key points that I should point out from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation report that was recently published that signify the scale of the problem that we are faced with. The £20 uplift to universal credit has been withdrawn, and there's no additional support for those who are not able to work or looking for work. Some elements of the benefit system increase poverty, there's increases in fuel cost, there's prices are increasing, cost of living is increasing, and there are predictions about rising child poverty as well as pensioner poverty. And if you couple that with what we already know about the borough, the number of households in poverty, unaffordable rents in the private rented sector, large numbers of people on the housing register and in temporary accommodation, it was really important for us to develop this piece of work, this framework, and to publish it, and basing it on what we know from our response to the pandemic. And our response does require a whole systems approach, and that's why I've been working across 4 portfolio areas with Councillor Woodley, Kennedy, Chapman on employment and skills, equalities, finance, health, adult social care, etc., alongside officers to develop the framework. I'd like to say thank you to them for their invaluable input, for helping make this a robust proposal. I'm not going to go into details of the framework. Hopefully everyone's had a look at that. I know that we have rehearsed it in a number of discussions elsewhere. But I do want to say that adopting a framework rather than a strategy will ensure that we are able to have practical aspects of an action plan and couple that with high-level justifications and principles that you'd expect to see in a strategy, with all of the detail that you'd also expect to see underneath that. It is ambitious, it's also flexible. It will allow the council to pivot and to prioritise according to need and to add resources when and where needed. Can I just take a moment to also thank the officers for the incredible hard work that they put into developing this. And Sonia is on the call online. So I'd like to say thank you to her team for all the hard work, and I commend the report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, and can I thank all the Cabinet colleagues and officers that have worked on this, and also the presentation that was given to scrutiny panel. As you said, it's been discussed in quite a lot of areas and really, really powerful piece of work. And we know the cost of living crisis is only going to get worse. And so having that flex and having that focus in this framework is so incredibly important. I'm really pleased that we're agreeing it this evening. Agreed? Oh, Councillor Kennedy.
I just wanted to, you mentioned the scrutiny panel. I did just want to formally thank colleagues on scrutiny who added some very good last minute strengthening of the work on outcomes and the work on how actually we put this into action and measure what we're doing. So thanks to scrutiny colleagues.
Brilliant, thank you. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say it's really helpful that we're taking the approach that we are looking at child poverty in a series of reducing overall poverty for families.
Thank you. Are we happy to agree the framework? Thanks, everyone. Agreed. Item 12, Residents' Charter, Deputy Mayor Nicholson.
Meg Lamble, you introduce if you wish. Your name's.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to. No,
I think in terms of the, I was going to come back in on Woodbury Down and split the difference, and you've got Trinity Court as well. So
okay, no, it's fine. Thanks, Meg Lamville. This is really the first of 2 papers. The next item on the agenda as well sits literally alongside this residents' charter that we're we're looking at. We spoke about lives changing as a result of development earlier on in the meeting, Mayor Glanville, didn't we? And this is a really important charter that sets out the role of the council and what it will do and to support specifically residents who are involved one way or another in part of the council-led estate regeneration programme. It sets out very clear commitments between council and tenant and leaseholder and indeed freeholder on those said estates. So as and when regeneration initiatives come forward, there are some very, very clear expectations that residents can demand of the council as part of that regeneration, that housing-led regeneration process. Mayor Glanville, the report is as set out. And I do hope that everybody can sort of see it is simple in the way in which it's communicated, and it's very simple in that agreement between council and residents. So with that, the report is as set out. Commend to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. And obviously there is a clear distinctive link between all of the regeneration papers this evening. And again, thanks to yourself and officers that have been working on this. I think that commitment to our residents on regeneration estates is incredibly important. We've always put great store in it, and now bringing it together in a single charter is incredibly powerful, and again a manifesto commitment of ours to do so. So good to be doing it tonight. Are we happy to agree item 12, and then I'll hand back to you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson, on the ballot bit that is so intrinsically linked? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Back to you on 13.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Glanville. And as mentioned, this very much sits alongside the item that we've just approved, the Residents' Charter, and this guarantees the ballot of those residents who are directly affected by the estate regeneration project. And it sets out, again, a very clear role for the ballot. And it clearly sets out that actually this would be part of an iterative process. It enables residents to have that final say on the plans to improve their homes, to improve the estates on which their homes are. And it also sets out, of course, quite clearly, Mayor Glanville, what would happen if, for example, the residents disagreed through that ballot with the regeneration plans. So this again sets out with clarity that expectation and that relationship between council and resident around regeneration and change. And combined with 12, it's a very strong and powerful portfolio of participation, engagement, and meaningful say on what it is that happens to people's homes. The report is as set out. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. It's interesting, actually, London-wide, how the ballot process is actually seeing very high levels of endorsement for estate regeneration, which I would have believed, but I think some of those that perhaps favoured ballots over the iterative consultation did not perhaps expect to see. And we see it later in the Trinity Court, which is quite a small ballot, but again, follows those principles. Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. So item 14 bounces back to me, but I've worked on it with Councillor Etty and ward councillors, and that's keeping communities together, the updated local lettings policy at Woodbury Down. It'd be fair to say we've been developing and working on our local lettings policies for regeneration estates. And I thank council officers, and especially James Goddard's team, but obviously housing needs and regeneration colleagues, and Anne Byrne, actually. And I know Anne Byrne has left us as head of the Woodbury Down regeneration, but I pay a huge tribute to her and her work at Woodbury Down, not just on this piece of work, but more broadly. I went down to see phase 3 only last week, and we're seeing 117 new social rented homes being built. They are literally coming out of the ground on Seven Sisters Road for Woodbury Down residents and tenants most of all, especially those living in phase 4, which we're doing some planning work on at the moment, but more broadly, this is the largest number of social rented units for a decade coming forward, and it is absolutely right that we get the right strategic lettings process in place to let those homes, because by the time we come back to the chamber after the elections, I know we've got one more cabinet, but by the time we come back, the teams that will be implementing this policy will be starting to have those conversations with our residents on Woodbury Down and talking to them about moving and allocating them their new homes. And one of the bits of work that's happened as we've evolved through the Woodbury Down regeneration is tenants' choice. So we pre-allocate almost a year before the homes are complete and allow some co-production and co-design on those homes, including kitchen layout choices, finish and everything else. And that delivers those real homes for real people that have been part of this journey. And this local lettings policy update is especially important because Woodbury Down has changed. Woodbury Down regeneration started before I was even elected to this council. I have been on this council in one way or another for nearly 16 years, 6 as mayor, 10 as councillor. Think of all the changes in government policy that have taken place, but think of the changes within families that have taken place during that time. When we started Woodbury Down regeneration, the conversation was around individual bedrooms for children. A real powerful statement that those residents that moved through the regeneration of Woodbury Down would see their children get their own bedrooms. The housing crisis has fundamentally changed the nature of homelessness in Hackney, but also those people that were children at the start of Woodbury Down or starting young families now see those children at home grown up, and they're those hidden households that this policy change is designed to accommodate. And anyone who's worked on regeneration and knows those communities deeply, as many of us in this room know, the sense that this regeneration is for the people of Woodbury Down, Colville, Nightingale is palpable, because they have lived on and around building sites now for almost 2 generations. And what we do through this local lettings policy is make sure that we have an updated policy to ensure that those people that have been a part of that journey get the homes that they need. But we also have an eye to that wider housing crisis and making sure that when we allocate those homes more broadly, they're done in a fair way. And we have been really clear, I think, across everything that we're doing around regeneration, that when we finish these projects, there'll be a net increase in genuinely affordable housing, and that is incredibly important. There will be a surplus of homes, and that surplus of homes is what hidden households and the wider list benefit from. At Woodbury Down, we still don't yet end up with a net surplus just on Woodbury Down, but when you look at it in the round with all of our other projects, there is a net surplus. And we're working very hard through the master plan process to try and increase at every phase the amount of social rented homes that we deliver there. But I know that this is incredibly important to Woodbury Down. And there's Councillor Young, just desperate to come into the room to say how important it is to Woodbury Down. But I hope you'll that indulging on the introduction is allowed, and we're. I don't know if Councillor Ette wants to add anything else to the report.
I'd just like to say well done for a very good job with regards to the Woodbury Down. I think for people who do not know, from the time it started, it has added over 2,000 homes to that area, and in which 533 are social housing. And I think, I mean, having to update this policy where adult children of those tenants that the Mayor Glanville have said will be given the opportunity to move to their own home, you know, that meets their needs is very good. And also with regards to right to return, I mean, we've seen the right to return. We've seen an example of that with regards to Tower Court in Stamford Hill. We've seen how important it is, because these are the things that really keep the communities together, where the young children, where the young adults are still within the community, and those that has the right to return. So it clearly shows how much work that is being done from where it started, and also in terms of the next regeneration that is going on. I really commend this to the cabinet, and I really say well done for a good work.
Thank you, Councillor Etty, and thank you again. And just where you finished, last remark, Woodbury Down takes so long because we keep communities together. We don't decamp people, demolish estates, move them away and not see them return. It is absolutely sacrosanct, every bit of Hackney Council regeneration, whether it's in partnership at Woodbury or direct delivery, that there is a right to return to a new social rented home in the community that people live in. And that is almost unique across London. We don't break up communities through our regeneration. And those new buildings that you see at Woodbury Down, hundreds of Hackney families from that estate live in those homes. They are not just shiny private towers. They are real homes for real Hackney residents. And this is what the whole suite of policies that Councillor Nicholson and I are bringing this evening seek to continue to do. I hope on that note we can agree the report. No pressure after that emotional heartstring, and thank you. Oh, agreed? Great. An equally important response to an incredibly timely and prescient scrutiny review from Children and Young People's. I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor Bramble and Councillor Woodley, but I would just like to pay tribute to the work of Children and Young People's scrutiny, especially Councillor Conway, for this work around exclusions. It's even more timely given some of the challenges we've been dealing with today. And hand it over to Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I welcome this piece of work. As you long know, one of the things that I often speak to you in great lengths and we discuss is exclusions. I'm often speaking about our schools and the brilliant education that they provide, some of the best schools in the country, but I've always maintained the best schools in the country should not have the highest attendance rates in the country. And it's really important that those two things are more aligned. I reflect back before the pandemic, sitting at City Hall, Mayor Glanville, for about 2 hours on a panel speaking about exclusions and the things that we are doing. And I know that the report has been in the making for some years now, and some of the things in the report actually highlight some of the good work that we are doing, but we absolutely accept the challenge. It's really important that for the majority of children that we acknowledge that it does go well, but actually for those children that don't have a good experience and it doesn't go well, when it goes wrong, though their journey is sometimes is very detrimental to the outcomes and where that leads to. One of the things that is important to highlight as well is disproportionality. And actually today we had in Children's Social Care and Education, I spoke at their show and tell anti-racist practice and talking about their plan, and officers were setting out all the different things that we were doing. There's no scientific evidence to say if you are black, you should be more likely to be excluded in school. And Mayor Glanville, there's a moment in time for us to make sure we sit on the right side of history, and I know that you stand shoulder to shoulder with me on this. When you talk about slavery, people know that was a long time ago, and we all understand how terrible that was. But actually, right now, 10 years' time from now, when people sit in these chambers and said there was a time that children were excluded because of the colour of their skin, they will be abhorrent. They will feel this is terrible in the way that when we look at what our ancestors have done and think that's terrible. So it's really important that we embrace this report and to ensure that we as a council work with our schools to make sure we're on the right side of history. It's really, we spoke about, if you bear with me, Chair, we were walking around St Dominic's and there were so much moments around embracing identity, culture, gender, difference, everything was there. And one of the posters that we saw was celebrate your fro, your Afro fro, you know, where children sometimes have been excluded for their hair. Now, I'm not saying children shouldn't follow school rules. I used to be a teacher. But there's something about disproportionality and race and racism and structural racism and inequality with the system that we have to be being comfortable talking about. I want to commend the work that Annie and the team are doing and the work with schools and the Scrutiny Commission for ensuring that we drive this piece of work going forward. We cannot rest until this inequality, the disproportionality, and the injustice is what happening in some of our children is happening in our schools. And that also extends to some of our children with special educational needs. The last thing I would do, Mayor Glanville, I suppose starting off with reception, there's a little Mary Poppins inside of me. One of the things that I want to commend is the work of the primary schools and the work they've done. There's been no permanent exclusions now for I think about 4 years. And I want to commend the work that they are doing really, really hard to ensure that they're supporting and facilitating our children through their journey in the primary sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Did you want to add, Councillor Woodley?
Thank you. I mean, absolutely echo every word Councillor Bramble said there. I guess from my perspective, I've also sort of thought it's shameful where we've had children excluded because of undiagnosed or misdiagnosed or just not tolerated special educational needs. And I think a more inclusive approach is something we're deeply committed to here in Hackney. I'm really pleased to see work underway to that end in our centre services. I'm really pleased also to see in these recommendations and our response focus on everything from behavioural management through to recognising the value of alternative provision where it is bespoke and we need to recognise its value, or where we need to develop it and support it into doing better. So a slightly different angle, but the same strength of feeling, I think, as Councillor Bramble. Absolutely welcome the work that the Scrutiny Commission undertook, but also the dedication of our officers to recognise where improvement is required and to ensure that we do improve.
Thanks very much. Just before Deputy Mayor Bramble comes back in, I think it's also worth recognising that it isn't just about exclusions themselves, it's also the experience that follows from exclusion and the quality of that provision that our children get, regrettably either in a short-term basis or long-term basis get excluded too. We are doing quite a lot, and I will hand back to Deputy Mayor Bramble, but I did want to recognise the provision at New Regents. You know, it cannot be right that for large chunks of the last 10 years, people have been in porta cabins, poor quality accommodation for schools that are serving some of the most vulnerable people. And now we've opened a brand new pupil referral unit that has some of the highest quality accommodation anywhere in the borough, Hoxton West, I hasten to add. And we're then using that Igbros site to then create that post-16 provision for SEND through the Garden School expansion. Both really important parts of this work and linking it together. Go back to Deputy Mayor Bramble.
You're so right, Mayor Glanville, and one of the things that we've been talking about as well is our in-house clinical service and how that sits alongside that experience for children and young people of that thought of being excluded and emotionally what that does for them. And also just to thank you in my support for advocating and lobbying that the council have a full-time officer to work with parents, with schools, and also addressing some of that work around exclusion. And thank you, because I know that it was a journey, let's say, and just want to welcome and thank you for your support in that.
No, thank you. And I do hope that this report does go to full council in the summer so we can have that broader debate with Cabinet colleagues and Scrutiny Commission members, because it is so vitally important. Are we happy to, and thank you for bringing it here actually in terms of executive response, because it shines a light on this really important issue and our commitment to solving it. Are we happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Great. Trinity Court.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Glanville. And this picks up, as you mentioned earlier on an actual ballot that has taken place. And if I may just put it into a very brief context, this Trinity Court is based on the de Beauvoir estate. And de Beauvoir estate, as you know, Mayor Glanville, has been going through over the last few years a very extensive sequence of design phases, bringing forward new development on the estate, which will involve the creation of some 300 new homes, and alongside at least half of which will come forward as affordable homes. This is part of phase 2. So Trinity Court sits within phase 2. It has indeed a very small number of residents, 6 in total. 75% through the ballot voted in favour of the demolition of Trinity Court at their decant to temporary homes, and they are currently going through a process of just establishing if they'd like to return to a new home that will get built on that site in due course. But where 6 homes were, Glanville, there will be 40 new homes created. And that is quite a substantial increase to meet the real genuine housing needs that we have in the borough, which I know we're all very aware of. There are also some commercial tenants who have been using part of Trinity Court on the ground floors too. And there will be 600 square metres of non-residential space brought forward in the new development as well. So we can keep a mix of uses going on within the new block as and when it is built out. So this evening we're being asked to authorise the decant status for Trinity Court and also to authorise the initial and final demolition notices. The final demolition notice is obviously predicated on planning permission being granted at some point in the future, but this just gives officers the authority to move forward with a final demolition notice should that come about. And it is also credit should go on the record for all of the officer team behind this who have worked very closely with residents to bring about this ballot and this understanding of a regeneration scheme. And also to Councillor Billington and to Councillor Peters for their continued oversight and leadership as the de Beauvoir councillors on the regeneration initiative as a whole, and particularly in just supporting residents to connect with the housing regeneration team on the ground. With that, I commend the report, and it is as set out.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. A really important journey and a really important moment, and the 6 into 300 without any loss of resident assets, I think is really important to capture. Are we happy to agree the decant status and the recommendations? Agreed, excellent. Item 17, school governor appointments. Despite the fact that we went to St Dominic's, I do not know Wayne, I don't think any of us do. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I know, no, we don't know Wayne, but again, just to always extend my thanks to all of the people that volunteer and also the councillor colleagues who volunteer on our governing bodies. It makes such a difference to our communities, our parents, our children, and just people who have a general interest in school and education, whether they have children in schools or not. Thank you.
Brilliant. And we met some amazing governors recently on our school visits, so I echo that thanks. Are we happy to agree the appointment? Agreed. Under 18, no new items of restricted urgent business. And we decided we did not need to discuss the exempt appendix, so I don't need to exclude press and public. The meeting is closed. Thank you so much. And I think loads of us have other places we need to be.